2NURFM, a broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.
Professor Jim Jost. Jim,
Morning, Mark.
It's been happening again. The Don has decided that tweeting at 2 or 3 in the morning is the way to go.
Well, yes, he's sort of famous for late night tweets. This one in particular, about a week ago, 6 or 7 days ago, which started out perfectly coherent and then ended abruptly with some word that no one really knows the meaning of. It appears to be a typo, and it's created a little bit of a storm, if you like, a bit of controversy as people try to figure out, well, what was he really on about? Well, I don't think that's really the important point. I mean, there are a couple of things that we should think about here. One, the President of the US tweeting very late at night, doing off-the-cuff remarks without any sense of filtering is potentially very dangerous, because what we see with this particular tweet is that it appears like he just broke off for whatever reason, fell asleep, dropped his phone, got distracted, whatever the reason. Now, this is a fairly harmless instance, but it doesn't take too much imagination to look at more serious consequences and more serious sorts of tweets. And if we look at a number of the tweets that he put out over the London terrorist attacks on London Bridge and so forth, they're not particularly presidential. They're most of them, bar one, are point scoring. And the tweet about the Lord Mayor of London deliberately taking the Lord Mayor's remarks out of context and then tweeting as if he was making some form of presidential comment. Now, he might have just been making some sort of off-the-cuff remark, tweeting to his followers, which he certainly was, but the politics of that particular tweet carries a lot more weight because it's coming from the President and appears to be critical of the Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor's handling of what was going on in London. And from all reports, the President took it out of context and scored some political points at the expense of what was going on in London.
That particular one aside, you could probably argue the point that was what got him elected on that popular platform of being, I'm not like all the other guys that sort of play by the rules and are part of the system. I'm sort of more where you are. I sort of do it my own way. If I say what I feel, and you could say, hang on a minute, well, if I'm elected to be that way, I'm doing what you want me to do, or what you expect me to do.
Yes, I think that's a fair comment, Mark, but he is the president of one of the world's largest military power, and what he says carries a lot more weight. Yes, he was elected on a very unorthodox approach. He basically went against the grain on almost everything, refused to take advice, trusted his own judgment, and got elected. Now, in Donald Trump land, that justifies, therefore, not listening to people who know about stuff, not taking advice, not doing your homework, but simply reacting from a gut feeling or some form of spontaneous response without thinking it through and looking towards the consequences. Now, I think what we have with Donald Trump is someone who simply reacts. He has an idea of where he wants to go, and he's going to get there regardless. And if that means ignoring sensible advice or taking a slightly longer way to get there, but one that actually achieves the objective with minimal political fallout, he doesn't seem to take that path at all. He's probably the least presidential president that the US has ever had.
And I guess if you've got a whole team of experts that are experts in certain fields, you have to, I guess, take on board their expertise and knowledge in particularly very explosive and sensitive matters.
Well, Mark, to put it in a very banal context, most of us in our jobs know some things, and we're pretty good at what we do most of the time. But we also rely on a large team of people who do other things that we don't necessarily have the expertise with, and we wouldn't pretend to. And we take their advice because they're the people that we pay to give us the information that we need. What we see happening with Donald Trump is a continual refusal, or a practice, if you like, where he just does not take the advice or goes his own way regardless. That's okay when you're on the campaign trail because it sends a particular message that you are independent. once you're in the position of power in the presidential seat, you then have to take a little more circumspect. But let me just sort of add on top of that, he's not the only political leader that we've seen in recent years who operates in this way. He's just happened to be in the most powerful area. We've got a couple in Australia who shoot from the hip and then think later. And that, when you're the leader of a country, that's not particularly productive. It's a high-risk venture. And given Donald Trump's status, we need to be a little more careful and not simply laugh at him, but actually take seriously the fact that he's where he is and has power to do things that mere mortals don't.
Yeah, and I guess a lot more people are watching him than those here in Australia. And I guess to bring us back completely to where we started, stay off the phone at 2 a.m. No good can come of it.
Well,
no good can come of it. Trust me.
Yes, I think that's one of the lessons of Donald Trump. But he hasn't yet learnt that lesson. He has been advised. He has had advisors who have suggested different strategies to minimise the silly stuff and maximise the more statesman-like approach. He hasn't taken that advice yet.
We'll watch some of that stuff unfold over the weeks and months to come. I'm sure Jim will be back talking about this down the road. Professor Jim Jost,
my pleasure, Mark.
Politics with us. You know him, you love him, and he'll be back next time at 2NURFM 103.7.